because one thing is extremely clear. A quantum leap happened from us being in the caves, and then all of a sudden, we're building pyramids.
Ancient astronaut proponents claim that the spark of the human civilization came from deep space, when aliens swooped down, impregnated our women, and took off. It's the age-old story of love 'em and leave 'em.
There was interbreeding going on. It talks about it in the Bible, how the sons of God had come down and found that the daughters of man were very attractive, and they cohabitated with them and produced offspring.
But did they just leave us, or did they stick around for a while? Some ancient astronaut theorists now say that the story of our creation wasn't quite so romantic. They suggest the way it actually happened was more like genetic manipulation. The earliest creation story involves the Sumerian gods creating humans from tubes, jars, and clay. And if you subscribe to the ancient astronauts' theory, the gods doing this creating aren't actually gods, they're aliens. But whether they mated with us or created us out of clay, one question still remains unanswered. Why?
The extraterrestrials did not dirty their hands. They had an obedient workforce here on Earth that worshipped them as gods.
They needed a workforce.
The ancient astronauts had come here for one reason: for mining. And not only did they have them working in the mines, but they were also raising animals, growing crops. They basically were a servant to the gods.
We may find a clue as to when the aliens started working here in China, with an interesting people called the Dropa.
The Dropa allegedly is an extraterrestrial race that has still survived here on planet Earth.
As the story goes, in 1938, an archaeologist discovered a strange gravesite in a cave near the China-Tibet border. Inside, he found tiny skeletons with large skulls. He also found some strange stone discs with microscopic inscriptions embedded in grooves. Although bizarre, his discovery was overlooked for 20 years, until someone claimed to have translated the stone's inscriptions. They supposedly told a story of beings that had crash-landed on our planet 12,000 years ago.
They were stranded. They developed a civilization, a village, and they continued to flourish and plant crops. And in the end, they became the ancestors of the Chinese race.
It's a claim fantastic enough to have warranted further investigation. But we may never know the truth, because many people claim that the Chinese are keeping the evidence under lock and key.
And ask yourself, why are there 1.2 billion Chinese on Earth? Because they were here first.
Incredible. But how?
But there is a skull not unlike the one supposedly found in China that might tell a similar story. And we can examine this skull to find out what its history may be. It was found by a teenage girl in Mexico 70 years ago.
She went in and she saw a skeleton lying on its back. She was able to scrape the dirt away with her hands and reveal a skeleton lying in the hole, and which she said was misshapen.
Since that day, the skull has changed hands at least twice. Today, Ray and Melanie Young like to think of themselves as the skull's parents.
I had a friend that was working with me, and her husband had come into it from the lady who actually found it because of my background as a neonatal nurse, and he asked me to look at it. And first he showed me a picture, and the picture was just of this part of the face, and I looked at it and thought, I have no idea what that is.
They wanted to find out once and for all what its story was, so they brought in alternative knowledge guru Lloyd Pye to investigate.
There was just no doubt in our mind that he was the person to take over.
The first thing I did, I was on my way to a very big UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada. So I suggested that they allow me to take the two skulls to this conference that I was going to, where there were going to be 500 people, many of whom would be very highly knowledgeable about this kind of material, and see if they agreed.
What they found surprised everyone.
They were unanimous in their assertions that this skull looked very much like it would fit in the head of a gray.
A grey alien is the kind many people say they've seen here on Earth.
So then I was fully committed to the idea of taking it to scientists.
One of the first things Lloyd did was to find out exactly how old the skull was. He took it to a lab in Miami for radiocarbon dating and discovered that it was 900 years old. Then the scientists looked at the skull under a microscope. They were amazed to find a strange red residue and unusual strong fibers inside the bone.
So there are two great anomalies, but it is absolutely one of a kind as far as we know, and as far as anybody we took that material to, mycologists and others, know. Never been seen before.
Lloyd believes that this skull is not totally from our world. He thinks it's probably from the offspring of a human and an extraterrestrial. He's named it the Star Child.
That really was not the best choice of names for it. Try to talk to a scientist and you'd say, I want to talk to you about an unusual skull I have. They would want to know if it has a name or is it called anything, and I would have to say the Star Child, and right away, click.
The only way Lloyd can find out for sure if the Star Child is human or alien is to test its DNA. He's staking his reputation on it, and he's ready to find out the truth, for better or for worse. It's difficult for many mere mortals to get their head around the concept of aliens creating us and facilitating our major ancient accomplishments.
This is our planet, Astron Delta.
But perhaps hard science can build up the theory, or else tear it down.
We are down deep in the ground looking at these ancient levels, and if there was physical evidence of extraterrestrials, we'd be the ones to find them.
The evidence that extraterrestrials colonized us, interbred with us, and shared all their knowledge can seem overwhelming.
The high density of our planet made it possible for us to advance gravity and therefore anti-gravity theories. It's beyond me.
At many sites around the world, we can only marvel at how ancient people could have cut and moved stones weighing up to 100 tons each. Some archaeologists are amazed by ancient relics that have come to light over the last few decades. And one of the most baffling could potentially change the way we write history. It's often thought that Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, but perhaps it was actually the aliens. Deep inside an ancient Egyptian temple, a strange wall carving lures many visitors with its mysterious symbolism. Most Egyptologists believe it shows the birth of a god, but others say this hieroglyph depicts an ancient electric light bulb, complete with filament and electrical cord.
It is absolutely spectacular to see that, electricity was not invented by our civilization. It's been around for centuries. It's just been forgotten, lost knowledge.
It's hard to imagine, but some believers bring up another point. How did the ancient Egyptians carve all these hieroglyphs and pictures inside a pitch-dark pyramid? They rule out oil lamps and torches because little telltale soot has been found inside the pyramids. So could they perhaps have used batteries? Not far from Egypt, in the 1930s, archaeologists found a remarkable device that proved the people who lived here 2,000 years ago actually did make an electric battery. Today, it's called the Baghdad battery.
A lot of these things like electricity, those things were only privy to a select few.
How could people from the time of Jesus have known how to make a battery?
I believe that a lot of these ancient technologies that we've been rediscovering do indeed come from extraterrestrials. I think what's happened is that the technology was possibly left here for us to use for a while, and then maybe after a while it started breaking down, and just like our car, we don't know how to fix it, and so it gets destroyed.
While ancient astronaut believers see the Baghdad battery as evidence of alien intervention, far away in Texas, ancient technology professor Nancy Reed sees something else.
The technology needed to make the Baghdad battery is basically very simple. The hollow rod is copper, and the solid one is iron, and then of course we would have filled the container with vinegar.
When they're put together, the acidic vinegar sparks an electrical reaction.
And by touching the ends of, say, a voltmeter to this, we can create about a half a volt.
Half a volt isn't much electricity, and it's still a mystery why electrical batteries were made 2,000 years ago. But were aliens responsible for the technology, or was it something even more baffling? And could the Baghdad battery, or something like it, have powered the Egyptian light bulb? We might be able to find the answer to this question in Switzerland. Author Eric von Däniken recently built a theme park revolving around the ancient astronaut's theory. And it features an incredible exhibit based on the ancient Egyptian light bulb. Publicist Caroline Schneider finds the light bulb a remarkable idea.
This is what it looks like. So they must have had a way to have light within those pyramids. This is a possibility. If it's true, I do not know. But just thinking of it, it's quite amazing if they really had it.
At von Däniken's theme park, the light bulb is fueled by replicas of the Baghdad battery. But was the original image actually a light bulb, or is it just an idea born from someone's wild imagination?
When I read von Däniken's books now, I do the same thing I tell my students to. Cover up the caption, and I will guarantee you that if you do that, you don't see a light bulb. You see what looks to be an eggplant. You take your hand off, you go, it's a light bulb? Huh? What's he talking about? Tell you what, find the glass, find where it's the metal, where you screw it into the socket, and find the source of energy for that light bulb. That's physical evidence.
It seems that all that glistens is not gold. But is there gold in the ruins of Teotihuacan? And more importantly, is there any proof that aliens built this place to process gold? Archaeologist Kim Goldsmith has spent the past 24 years studying the ruins of Teotihuacan.
There was no gold here. There is no gold anywhere in this area to start off with. There were no gold mines, and they were not bringing gold from anywhere during Teotihuacan times.
So what about the theory that Teotihuacan was an alien landing pad?
Think about this. These guys, these extraterrestrials, are able to traverse interstellar space, and they need to eyeball where to land? Don't they have GPS or something?
Still, perhaps these pyramids could have had some kind of astral significance. Ted Strain thinks that they were aligned to be an exact match for our solar system. But archaeologist Ken Fader says when it comes to the pyramids, pattern is in the eye of the beholder.
But if you stop at 9, you get 9, you go, wow, there are 9 pyramids, just like the 9 planets. Well, that's because you stop counting, because there's actually a 10th, and an 11th, and a 12th. But I don't know, maybe the ancient astronauts will think that that means that there used to be more planets in the solar system, because we end up with this perfectly circular argument.
Teotihuacan was probably a thriving city, no different from any other.
And the people who lived here were architects and engineers. There were people involved in the administrative and judicial system of the site, and there were also people involved in the army that defended the city.
So let's return to everyone's favorite ancient astronaut mystery, the Great Pyramids of Egypt. People have speculated that the pyramids were built by everyone from Atlanteans to aliens, anyone but the Egyptians. But archaeologist Ken Fader says that the proof is written right there on the walls.
Well, that's sort of like saying we don't know how they built the Empire State Building. We have photographs of them building the Empire State Building, but we don't have photographs of building the pyramids. We have artwork produced by the Egyptians showing how they moved huge rocks. We have direct physical evidence on the rocks themselves of how they carved them.
We may never find proof of extraterrestrial stonemasons. But today we have the chance to prove that hundreds of years ago, humans mated with aliens.
Being here on the border, working in the county hospital, I have seen every genetic disorder that's come through. So I've seen a lot of stuff, and this doesn't fit into any of that.
We know that the skull is about 900 years old, and that its eye sockets look out of this world. But the test that will best reveal whether or not this star child is part alien is a DNA test. Lloyd has put the skull through a battery of DNA tests, and what he's found only deepens the mystery of the star child. Jason Eshelman of Trace Genetics in San Francisco has lots of experience working with ancient DNA. He worked on Kennewick Man, the 9,000-year-old human remains found in Washington state in 1996. Now, years later, Jason's got another big challenge, the Star Child.
What drew me to it is that Lloyd was generally interested in addressing some of these questions with scientific tools where we could attempt to address some of these questions.
The process of extracting ancient DNA isn't very different to the process for modern DNA. It's just much harder to find ancient DNA that's still intact.
Any biological material that's 900 years old, you'd expect the DNA to have gone through some degradation.
There's no guarantee that Jason will be able to see the Star Child's DNA, especially if it's alien, and if aliens even have DNA. He's got his work cut out for him, and the results will be revealed later. But for now, we return to the puzzle of the Nazca Lines in Peru. Some people believe there's no way humans alone could have made huge geoglyphs like these thousands of years ago without the ability to see their work from some kind of air or spacecraft. But one expert says there were no aliens required. Joe Nickel is a skeptic with the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal.
That's the upper margin.
He says it couldn't have been aliens who made the Nazca Lines for some very simple reasons.
The ancient astronauts, of course, would have hovered overhead with a flying saucer. This would have created a great problem with dust. The Nazca helpers would, of course, have put dust masks on and squinted and bent down low. And then they would have used sticks and cord, like we're doing, to finish the figure.
First, he gets his materials ready.
This is un-Nazca-like, but it's simply what we have to use since we don't have a gravel-littered desert.
Then he measures out the diagram of the figure. In this case, he'll attempt to recreate one of the most beautiful Nazca geoglyphs, the 150-foot spider.
They should be about 20 feet. See if this is about 20 feet from here to there. Huh? About 7. Let's just measure here again. This time spent on this particular configuration pays dividends. That's why I'm taking plenty of time with it.
But Joe seems to be having some trouble.
Okay. Then,
perhaps some extraterrestrial help would be useful after all. Joe Nickel's got a lot to prove of love 'em and leave 'em.
There was interbreeding going on. It talks about it in the Bible, how the sons of God had come down and found that the daughters of man were very attractive, and they cohabitated with them and produced offspring.
But did they just leave us, or did they stick around for a while? Some ancient astronaut theorists now say that the story of our creation wasn't quite so romantic. They suggest the way it actually happened was more like genetic manipulation. The earliest creation story involves the Sumerian gods creating humans from tubes, jars, and clay. And if you subscribe to the ancient astronauts' theory, the gods doing this creating aren't actually gods, they're aliens. But whether they mated with us or created us out of clay, one question still remains unanswered. Why?
The extraterrestrials did not dirty their hands. They had an obedient workforce here on Earth that worshipped them. The Dropa allegedly is an extraterrestrial race that has still survived here on planet Earth.
As the story goes, in 1938, an archaeologist discovered a strange gravesite in a cave near the China-Tibet border. Inside, he found tiny skeletons with large skulls. He also found some strange stone discs with microscopic inscriptions embedded in grooves.
As gods.
They needed a workforce.
The ancient astronauts had come here for one reason: for mining. And not only did they have them working in the mines, but they were also raising animals, growing crops. They basically were a servant to the gods.
We may find a clue as to when the aliens started working here in China, with an interesting people called the Dropa.
Because One thing is extremely clear. A quantum leap happened from us being in the caves, and then all of a sudden, we're building pyramids.
Ancient astronaut proponents claim that the spark for human civilization came from deep space, when aliens swooped down, impregnated our women, and took off. It's the age-old story